Before I get started with the story, let me give a shout out to Professor Black Truth because he posted this article on his page on his Twitter timeline, and this actually goes and coincides with what I was just recently talking about in my recent live stream that I did on November 19th on my Reign in Real Time channel, when I said that there's a double-edged sword when it comes to black people in America when it comes to the self-defense claim. The same can be said for stand your ground, something else that rarely, if never, works for black people is that stand your ground one. I have yet to see a black person walk away with the stand your ground defense unscathed. And when I say walk away from it, I mean not charged with anything, not having to serve any jail time, but actually was able to walk away from it with nothing attached to them. And it brings me to this case right here, because this case right here literally almost parallels exactly with the Kenneth Walker, Breonna Taylor situation that happened last year, but this one happened back in 2017. So this guy's name is Andrew A.J. Coffey IV. He is currently 27 years of age, and he was put on trial for a multitude of charges in which he was using self-defense when a raid happened on his home that ended up costing the life of his girlfriend, because his girlfriend was killed because they raided the home. She was killed, and then he fired back in self-defense, and I think he ended up facing murder charges for them killing his girlfriend. That's why I said the parallels is almost exactly the same with him and Kenneth Walker, and him and with his girlfriend and Breonna Taylor. Like, they're almost exactly alike. The only difference is Kenneth Walker didn't have to spend as much or nowhere near as long a time in jail as he did. This guy had to was in jail since 2017 and was looking at a possible life sentence until he was just now recently acquitted, in which I'm about to talk about in this story right here. A Gifford man who claimed he was defending himself and his girlfriend when he fired shots at deputies during an early morning raid in 2017 was acquitted Friday of charges that carried a life prison term. A jury found Andrew A.J. Coffey IV, age 27, not guilty of second-degree felony murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer by discharging a firearm, and 1 count of shooting or throwing a deadly missile. Now, remember how, if y'all follow my Reign in Real Time channel, I was just telling how the self-defense thing a lot of times does not work for black people. And this is the second time we're seeing this, even though this would be considered the first time if you want to do a timeline thing. This happened before what happened with Kenneth Walker. You have a black man inside of his home. He's with his significant other. And then a raid happens in the morning while people are half asleep or sleep altogether. The girlfriend gets shot and killed by the cops. Then the boyfriend defends himself by shooting back because they don't know who's in there. And they're the ones that get hit with all the charges. Do you see this guy got hit with every single charge possible, and none of the cops that fired up inside that came and did the raid got anything? So when a lot of black people say we need to, go back at them, yes, we definitely do. But at the same time, look at what happened. Exhibit A and Kenneth Walker can be Exhibit B. When we defend ourselves against them, this is what happens. It's like I said, that's why I said it's 2 different Americas that we're living in. We're living in 2 different systems, one that works for them and one that works against us. And either way, no matter how you spin it, both of those systems is exactly designed how America wants them to be. So they're working the way that they're supposed to. It's not broken. So don't waste your breath saying that it's broken. It's working exactly the way that it should. This guy right here should not even have been on a trial. He shouldn't have even been in jail. Because this was a raid, as far as I'm concerned, on the wrong house. Much like what happened with Kenneth Walker and Breonna Taylor. In a separate proceeding Friday, the same jury convicted Coffey IV of 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. So they had to get him on something. They just couldn't get him on the big charge. At his sentencing January 13th, he faces a maximum prison term of 30 years. Now look at that. Now, in the Rittenhouse case, all his gun charges were dismissed, and that was the one right there that they knew for sure, people knew for sure they were going to get him on. But when they took it away, that was it. They had to find him guilty on one thing, and now he can face about 30 years in jail. Hopefully his lawyers can fight that. But we'll see. I don't know. The state will be seeking that maximum 30 years upon him, Assistant State Attorney Chris Taylor said after court. The charges related to March 19, 2017 firefight between the Sheriff's Office Special Weapons and Tactical Team and Coffee IV at his home in the 4500 block of 35th Avenue, Gifford. His girlfriend, Alteria Woods, age 21, died during the raid after being struck by 10 bullets fired by a SWAT team member, including one shot that entered her chest. The second-degree murder count, defined as an intentional killing that was not premeditated, was in connection to Woods' death. And that's what they tried to get him with. They tried to get him on the death of his girlfriend from bullets that weren't even fired from his gun. Jurors seated last week for a trial that began Monday deliberated for about 11 hours before returning a verdict. The jury began deliberating Thursday afternoon following closing arguments and worked until around 10 p.m. before being told to return Friday. After court Friday, Coffey's attorney Adam Charzan, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, it's spelled Chrzan, said his client was relieved when it became clear the jury was acquitting him of the most serious charges. I think they weighed the evidence, applied the law, and took into account the defenses that were provided, and we argued successfully. Clearly that there was some overreaction and overreach by the Sheriff's Department of that raid. They should have pulled back, and they didn't. And this is what happens when you go into a volatile situation without all the information. Charzan blamed sheriff's officials for creating the situation that triggered Woods' death. The jury found that he was defending himself and Alteria and that he needed to do this. Coffey on Wednesday testified on his own behalf, as he did in March, during a stand your ground hearing, which I just talked about, seeking immunity from prosecution. Then he told Circuit Court Judge Dan Vaughn he and Woods had been asleep when deputies at the back of the house broke out the window to his bedroom using a pole that then detonated a flash bang device. Moments earlier, SWAT members at the front of the house had quickly taken his father, Andrew Coffey III, into custody after a brief struggle just outside of the home's front door. During his March hearing, Coffey IV said he thought he was being robbed, and when he saw what appeared to be a rifle sticking through the open window pointed at him, he insisted he didn't know the raid was underway when he fired a .45 caliber pistol out of his bedroom window, shooting it 2 or 3 times. Deputies in turn shot more than a dozen rounds toward the bedroom window, court records show. After the gunfire, investigators searched the house. Woods was discovered deceased on a bed in Coffey IV's bedroom. In the eldest Coffey's bedroom, deputies found marijuana, cigarettes, crack cocaine, along with 10 hydromorphone pills and 1 oxycodone pill, both painkillers according to reports. And see, they had to use that as a way to try to say, oh, they have a drug house going on. I wouldn't be surprised, but I didn't see that in the list of charges, so maybe that didn't apply. A grand jury in 2017 cleared SWAT team members of any criminal charges. And a sheriff's office internal investigation cleared them of any violations of policies and procedures, much like what happened with Kenneth Walker and Breonna Taylor. Mind you, this is in 2 different states. These are not the same states. In June, Vaughn denied Coffey's bid for immunity under the state stand your ground law. What have I said? It does not apply. An appeals court in October declined to overturn Vaughn's ruling. Taylor Friday said he respected the jury's verdict, but still rebuffed Coffey IV's claims of self-defense. Now, see, you heard that, right? They're claiming he did not defend himself, or he cannot claim self-defense, but they'll let Rittenhouse claim self-defense. Like I told you, that stand your ground and self-defense doesn't work for black people. We're not allowed to stand our ground. We're not allowed to defend ourselves, even outside of the bounds of, doing what we feel needs to be done. We'll still get hemmed up. Look at this case right here. Look at Kenneth Walker. Obviously, we believe that the state's case was righteous. We proved our case beyond a reasonable doubt, but the jury did not see it that way for the first part of the trial. But we are glad that justice was done and he was found guilty of the possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Coffey IV has a criminal record that includes 4 felony convictions, Taylor noted, which he said allows the state to seek an enhanced punishment for the gun conviction. Indian River County Sheriff Eric Flowers, in a statement issued after the verdict, stood by the actions of SWAT members during the raid. It's disappointing that this jury did not see that the tragic death of Alteria Woods occurred as a direct result of the actions of Andrew Coffey IV. Now they're blaming him. See, they're blaming him for her death. But they're the ones that did the raid. Basically saying, if you didn't make us do this raid, then she would be alive. The thing is, had he not fired back, both of them probably would be dead instead of just one. Our deputies were there as a result of drug complaints and sales and took fire from Coffey, upon which they had no choice but to protect themselves and others. So they're allowed to protect themselves, but he's not. In other words, he should be dead right along with his girlfriend. They might as well just go ahead and say that. Our hearts go out to the Woods family, Cap, as they still suffer from a loss of their daughter, but we stand by our statement that she should still be here. She would still be here had Coffey simply complied with law enforcement. How would he know? See, the way that these trigger-happy cops are, you can never take any chances because you don't know if they're going to pull that trigger or not, especially when they throw out all these commands. And notice they said comply. They love to use that word comply when it comes to black people. Woods' family has said she had attended Indian River State College and worked as a pharmacy technician at a public store in the Ryan Wood Plaza on 58th Avenue west of Vero Beach. She was studying to become a pharmacist. I swear these stories almost sound parallel with each other, especially when they mention the stuff about the drugs, because they always kept saying Breonna Taylor was connected to some kind of drug. Her ex was a drug pen or something like that, and they kept using that as a reason to justify her being killed. In January, Woods' mother, Yolanda Woods, filed a civil rights lawsuit in federal court against the sheriff's office and deputies involved in the raid. That lawsuit was recently put on hold pending the outcome of Coffey's IV's trial. Others inside the House denied the raid have also filed federal lawsuits against sheriff officials, including Coffey IV, his grandmother Vivian Scott, and her friend Leslie Lowry. And that's the whole article right there. Man, listen, I keep telling you, this is a us versus them society. They have their own set of rules. And we have ours that, you know, they love to enforce against us. But like I said, the parallels between this and Kenneth Walker are so eerie because they almost sound identical. It's just that they happened in 2 different states in 2 different years, but the outcomes were the same. Well, somewhat, because Kenneth Walker, he does, all his charges were dropped, but he was still in a situation where a raid happened, gunfire was exchanged. The spouse was killed, and they claimed it was over drugs. The only difference is this guy got found guilty for the illegal possession of the possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. So like I said, they had to get him on something, but they didn't want to accept that he was defending himself. That's the point. Even though all those other charges were dropped, the prosecution didn't want to let that go. See how happy they were that he got something? They probably would have been red hot if he got nothing. But Rittenhouse. Like I say, and have been saying and will continue to say, we are in 2 different Americas. Ours and theirs. And black people better wake up to the reality if they are still at least napping. Y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments.